question time. Any questions?
Christina, I've got one. You talked about the two uni students that linked up their uni to JCPenney. And then further on in one of the questions or the presentation, you talked about possibly trying to have links with industry associations and those sorts of things. How would those uni students have set up that linkage? And how would we go about it? So if I was a photographer, I've got a client as a photographer, and if I want him to be hooking up with celebrants and florists around his area, what's the process to do that?
You've got to make sure it's relevant. In the case of JCPenney, having a university link to their website wasn't relevant, so that's why Google penalised it.
But how did they set it up?
How they set it up was the uni students that they knew had connections with the IT guild in the university. So they're really smart. They got those people that worked at JCPenney talk to the IT people and get that happening. But really, it's just connections and networking, which you're really good at, which should be fine. And also asking the question and seeing how there can be some sort of reciprocal arrangement there. But
so
really,
if you have like a list of suppliers, for example, within the industry, that's considered linkage? That
yeah,
be recognised
but you want
by
them
Google?
linking to you. You don't want to be really linking out to them. That's the hard part of it.
But what about if it's reciprocal and you're both doing it?
Reciprocal's okay, but it depends on the quality of their website. If your website's a 5 out of 10 and theirs is a 1 and it's got any issues, then it's not good for you. So you want to analyse what their page rank is, what sort of authority their website has, the size of it. If it's a larger organisation than you, it's got a good website and everything, you want it linking to you.
And does that include other social media sites like Facebook?
Yeah. So Facebook and all that's part of it. So you want to make sure, we'll get to that in the second section about optimisation with Facebook, but you definitely want to make sure it's linking properly to your website and vice versa. Any other questions?
Just on that, if you had, so what's to say that one supplier won't turn around and say, well, no, you link to me. It's like, well, no, you link to me. Like, who links to who?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, it is better for them to link to you, but in some of those cases, a reciprocal link's fine. Yeah. You know, like you link to them, they link to you. You're both quality, you're both relevant. That's okay. Yeah.
So what you're saying really, if you're doing those links, then you need to also be constantly checking their websites, making sure there's a level of quality happening in their sites?
Yeah, to a certain degree, but I mean, if they're set up right and they're not a dodgy organisation, you should be fine. As long as they're not doing anything sort of backyard or trying to do too much inside themselves, because if they do anything black hat and get blacklisted, it could affect your site.
Sure.
We found that with a few clients. Another SEO provider had set them up to link to a page that had links to other clients, and they were blacklisted and it affected their SEO.
Right. I'm thinking as a manufacturer, we have a lot of dealers globally.
Okay.
I've recently done an audit and there's a lot that I wouldn't touch, but there are a few that we could potentially link to. But I guess it would be just having those discussions around that, what their website, what they're trying to achieve with their website, and making sure it's aligned.
I can only provide basic advice on it, but what we generally do, because we're experts, we have our team check it out. So we generally do it really properly, like we thoroughly check it out with our SEO R&D team.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it as a layperson, you just got to maybe base it on page rank, but it may or may not work. Yeah. Any questions?
What if, like, as part of your business, being a local government, you know, we do have a role to sort of link our community through to other community groups and stuff.
Yep.
And as you can imagine, the quality of the community groups' websites is often atrocious.
Yeah.
But it's our role as a local government to facilitate some of those connections. What do we do in that instance?
It's difficult.
We link through to the community groups from our website. But
We've actually had a couple of government bodies actually pay for those community groups to have their websites done. So actually had a website generator. We've built them for government groups where you have a website generator, you actually build them a template site that's within your guidelines, or you can actually set guidelines for them for building their site. And if they are a reputable community group, they may be able to get sponsorship as well and funding to review their site. Worst case scenario, WordPress can be okay, so at least it's not like sort of a backyard Joomla or open source framework. So yeah, I'll get to that too when we talk about framework. Any other questions?
You talk about the keywords and having, you know, more than 1%.
Yep.
Like what about keywords that you put out like your name, landscape, so that name.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Yeah, we have found that with companies. Sorry guys, the question over here was, what if your company name has a keyword in it and you're worried about spamming your website, like for example Tim Davies landscaping, and you've got the term landscaping being used everywhere. It's difficult. We have had it come across it with a few clients.
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways to ensure that is to look at the amount of content actually on the pages too, because if you've got, and that's an important point with the whole professional copywriting side of it, if you've got a home page that only has 50 words on it, you've got potentially spam issues with high density of keywords, and also it's just sparse content, and it's not good for Google too. I mean, we typically recommend at least, 250, 300 words?
350 is
350 words a page. So, and if you're dealing with a good chunk of content, it's less likely you're going to run into those spam issues. Yeah.
Another way to get around it would be to have lots of good articles on your site that you've written yourself.
For sure.
So then what that does is it increases the content on your site and it reduces the density and percentage of the landscaping word, because those articles obviously aren't going to say Tim Davies landscape. They might have other things in them.
Christina,
That's not always possible because sometimes the name of the company is the name of the product.
Yeah, that's what we were just saying. Yeah, that's what we were just saying. So how you get around that is you have other content on the site. So for example, articles about the industry, which may not necessarily mention a specific product, but it is a difficult one which you may.
But when you're relaying information about the product and services, that product name is evidently helpful to time.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Christina, a question regarding, you talked about how Google likes video content, it's quite good.
Yep.
So if you're a restaurant or a hotel, are you better off getting testimonials of people talking about their experience as opposed to just copying?
Both. That's exactly what we do. We do both. Because then you can also label the video and you can also really promote it through YouTube and you can put tagging on it that's attractive to Google. So I would do both.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, so hotels, restaurants, those types
Definitely.
of service providers.
Any service provider, it's good to have video because it's more credible.
And can it be just done on an iPhone?
Yeah.
That sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Because you were saying before.
Yeah.
you use
We've done quick and dirty ones. It actually looks more authentic. So, I mean, we're filming this seminar at the back there on 2 iPhones. They're quite stable, quite steady, good sound. We've got a mic here. I mean, you can do it quite easily in that way, rather than going to the expense of hiring camera equipment.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
So, from what I understand, you're saying if you have a website, the more words you have in that that aren't generic to your company name, you get better search results.
Not necessarily, it's balanced and it's quality content as well. So you don't just want random words, it has to be relevant to your organisation. But the problem is if you have, for example, Tim Davies landscape, you've got the word landscape repeated a lot. If you have other articles, it can start to reduce the spam percentage of the keyword landscape. It's a really tough balance and we generally look at it as case-by-case scenario with each client. So we actually go through and we make recommendations based on that. Because I'm not in copywriting all the time, we've got copywriters that deal with it every day. So yeah, you can always speak to a copywriter.
I just wanted to add on that point quickly. If you have way too much content on one page, it can potentially be a negative thing too. If you have 5,000 words of text on one page and it's massive and it's not very relevant, that can actually be a negative thing. So as Christina said, it's about having a balance and having the best goal of the user in mind.
And Susie?
I was going to ask, how do you work out that percentage? Is it a matter of taking all the text off the website and doing the calculation that way?
You can do it in Word. I mean, you can just highlight the text, work out how many words it is, and then divide it, work it out. We have some tools that we use internally, and our copywriter is pretty skilled with that. But really, it's, yeah, like I said, we have experts that do that.
Okay, 10% is the magic number for Google.
Not necessarily, it changes all the time. Just on general, about 1% is over 1% of particular keywords considered spamming. Sometimes you can push it a little bit higher. It's really a case-by-case thing.
So 1%.
And one other question. If you are dealing with managers or whoever controls budgets and you're trying to justify that you need to keep updating websites every 2+ years, do you have any external research, articles, evidence that justifies that rather than us just saying it and
That video from Google was perfect.
that's
Yeah, the Matt Cutts video
Matt
that I
Cutts,
showed in there, he actually talks about that. Yeah. So it's generally after a certain period of time. With code and everything, code's updated. For say WordPress, every 6 months we have certain clients that are updating code for WordPress, so it could even be old in 6 months. It's really an industry thing.
because some people think, well, the website's done, tick it off the box.
Yeah, not the
Yes,
case.
And that's quite.
But you can get away with it by making sure that your content's up to date, but if there's any sort of structural issues, then that could be an issue.
Right, okay.
I have just a question in relation to adverts. My previous employer, one of our competitors actually used our company name in their advert.
Yeah, we've had this happen to a few clients.
I didn't pursue it with Google because I thought, well, I'll just make that phone call to their marketing manager and
Yep.
ask them to put timage to remove it,
Yeah.
which they did. But if they didn't, what would be my
Yeah.
legal
Okay,
position?
I can't give legal advice, but I can give you what happened in a specific example. So we have a client called Bagley Engineering. If you Google Bagley Engineering, Enviro Concepts comes up, another company using their actual name. It's very difficult. We applied to Google 3 times to get it removed. It's actually against Google's guidelines, and they didn't remove it. And the next step for it was to recommend the client to take legal action. And I think really, if you have a trademark, you may have a little bit more standing. In this case, there's no trademark, so it's really complicated. And Google, like Mark mentioned before, Google gets a lot of requests, so it's really difficult. So we've got to move on. Sorry, one more.
Totally relevant question. What we're talking about, we've got an ex-employee that goes on to LinkedIn, he's no longer working with us.
Yeah.
And he's been gone for like 12 months, but if people search LinkedIn, he's still telling me the world he's employed by us. And no matter what we've asked LinkedIn to do, it's still there. So that's just there for life. We just have to accept that it's there.
Yeah, we have the same thing. There are people that have, been removed from X for a particular reason, they still have it on their profile. We haven't been able to do anything. You try and write to LinkedIn, it's really hard with Google and LinkedIn and all those media. Once it's out there, it's hard to get it off. I mean, in Europe, they put out a ruling called the right to be forgotten, and they would remove certain things from the internet. We had an example of a client that had a doctor's home address and phone number accidentally posted in Google, and they didn't remove it. So her phone number and address was for the world to see. Anyway, we've got to move on because we've just got to cover web development, and then we'll have a quick break and get into the next section.